Ben Shephard and his wife, Annie, were once seen as the embodiment of quiet British devotion. Not the loud, glittering type of celebrity romance, but a love built on loyalty, laughter, and decades of shared history. For over 20 years, Ben and Annie seemed unshakable. Through early mornings on Good Morning Britain, chaotic days filming Tipping Point, and evenings raising their two sons, their bond appeared untouchable. But recently, whispers have begun to circulate. Whispers suggesting that behind the warm smile of Britain's most beloved presenter lies a heart weighed down by regret, and a marriage standing at a painful crossroads. According to those close to the Shephards, Annie has finally broken her silence, and her words have left fans deeply unsettled. She reportedly said, quietly but firmly, "I just can't pretend anymore." For years, Ben and Annie Shephard were admired as one of television's most grounded couples. While so many celebrity marriages fractured under the pressure of fame, theirs seemed to thrive on simplicity. They met long before Ben became a household name. Back then, he was still hustling for presenting gigs, while Annie was building her career in fashion and PR. Friends say it was Ben's sense of humor, that cheeky, boy-next-door charm, that won her heart. They married in 2004, long before Tipping Point, long before Good Morning Britain, long before the fame and the chaos. To the public, they represented something rare, stability. While others courted the limelight, Ben and Annie stayed private. They raised their two boys quietly away from the tabloids. Ben would often gush about Annie on air, calling her the real boss at home and the reason I've got my feet on the ground. Fans adored that. To them, Ben was proof that good men still existed in showbiz. But as the years rolled on, that very devotion to work, the thing that built his success, would begin to pull him further away from the woman who once meant everything to him. It started slowly, a missed dinner here, a forgotten anniversary there. Ben's schedule grew relentless. GMB mornings, Tipping Point afternoons, charity appearances, awards ceremonies, endless travel. Annie understood. She always had. She'd been with him from the start, through the early rejections, the sleepless nights, the small victories. But understanding doesn't erase loneliness. Friends close to Annie have described her as strong, patient, and fiercely loyal. But even the strongest hearts have limits. In recent months, insiders say she began to withdraw, spending more time focusing on her own projects and less on the showbiz circuit. She stopped attending red carpet events, stopped accompanying Ben to ITV parties, and started spending more time with close friends in Richmond. At first, fans thought nothing of it. Annie had always preferred privacy. But those closest to the couple say the distance was no longer physical, it was emotional. The first whispers began after a charity event in early spring. Ben was photographed chatting warmly with a fellow presenter, a woman he'd been working closely with on a new ITV project. The images looked harmless, even friendly. But what caught fans' attention was Annie's absence. She'd been invited, as always, but chose not to attend. Days later, reports emerged suggesting Annie had grown weary of the blurred lines between work and home. One friend told the Mirror, "Annie's never been insecure. She's always trusted Ben completely, but lately she started to feel forgotten." Ben, for his part, was reportedly blindsided by her emotional distance. Colleagues say he looked tired, distracted, and quieter than usual during filming. When questioned gently by a GMB producer about how he was holding up, Ben reportedly just smiled and said, "It's been a long few weeks, that's all." But it wasn't just fatigue, it was heartbreak, the quiet kind that sneaks up when you realize the person you love most has started to drift away. For years, Annie stayed silent, choosing grace over gossip. But when approached by a close friend for comment about the growing rumors, she reportedly said something that stopped everyone cold. "I've spent my life supporting him, but somewhere along the line, I lost myself." Those words struck like thunder. This wasn't anger, it was grief. The grief of a woman who'd loved deeply, who'd given everything, and was now questioning if love alone was enough. Annie had reportedly told friends she felt like a ghost in her own marriage, that Ben's endless work schedule, his constant public commitments, had slowly pushed her into the shadows. It wasn't about another woman. It wasn't about betrayal in the tabloids. It was about the slow erosion of intimacy, the death of small moments that once made them who they were. A close family friend summed it up perfectly. There was no explosion, just silence that got too loud to ignore. For Ben, the realization hit hard. Those who've worked with him describe him as deeply empathetic, always the gentleman, always protective of Annie. But fame has a cruel way of demanding sacrifices, and sometimes the people you love most pay the price. When the rumors began, Ben reportedly confided in a close ITV colleague that he was terrified of losing her. "He's been my anchor," he said quietly. "Everything I've done, every success, it's because she believed in me when no one else did." But remorse doesn't always repair what's been broken. Sources close to the couple claim Ben took a brief step back from social events, choosing to spend more time at home. But Annie by then had already created emotional distance. Friends say she's not angry, she's simply tired. Tired of living around his schedule. Tired of being the supportive figure while the world adores him. Tired of smiling for photographs that no longer feel real. When fans noticed Ben had stopped posting family photos and Annie hadn't been seen by his side for months, speculation surged online. Comments flooded social media. "Where's Annie? Are they okay? They were the perfect couple." Viewers, especially older fans who had followed Ben since GMT days, felt personally affected. For many, Ben and Annie symbolized enduring love in a world of temporary fame. ITV insiders tried to downplay the rumors, insisting the couple were strong as ever. But those who knew them privately say otherwise. "They're trying to protect their boys," one friend explained. "Annie doesn't want this to become tabloid fuel. She's always been dignified, and she still is." Though neither Ben nor Annie have publicly confirmed it, multiple close sources claim they are currently living apart, not as a permanent split, but as time for reflection. Ben reportedly staying closer to London for filming, while Annie spends more time at their family home in the countryside. It's not a divorce, not yet, but those who've seen them say the silence between them is painful. A neighbor described seeing Ben visit briefly, dropping off flowers before quietly leaving again. She said, "He looked emotional. You could tell he still loves her deeply." Ben's charm has always been his gift. That warm grin, the twinkle in his eye, the ability to make anyone feel at ease. But now viewers are noticing something different. During recent Tipping Point episodes, some fans comment online that he seemed distracted, less playful, even a little sad. Perhaps it's projection, or perhaps it's the truth slipping through the cracks. The reality is, behind every polished broadcaster, there's a person wrestling with life's quiet heartbreaks. For Ben, this isn't about public image. It's about rediscovering balance, love, and purpose beyond the screen. Meanwhile, Annie has been focusing on her own life. Friends say she's taken up new projects, returned to creative work, and found comfort in spending time with her close-knit group of friends. She's always been independent, but for the first time in years, she's starting to feel like herself again. She's been seen walking her dog in Richmond Park, smiling politely to those who recognize her, but keeping her private world tightly guarded. There's grace in her silence, the kind that comes from dignity, not distance. Despite everything, there's no animosity. Sources close to the Shephards insist that both Ben and Annie still care deeply for each other. They share decades of memories, 2 sons, and a quiet, unwavering affection that hasn't vanished, it's just been buried under exhaustion. One close ITV colleague summed it up perfectly. They're not enemies, they're just 2 people trying to find their way back to what they once had. Ben, for his part, has reportedly been doing everything he can to show Annie she still matters, scaling back certain projects, spending more time with their boys, and trying, little by little, to rebuild trust through presence, not promises. But whether that's enough remains uncertain. What makes Ben and Annie's story so profoundly human is that it's not about scandal. It's about drift. It's about how even the most genuine love can falter under the quiet pressure of ambition, schedules, and exhaustion. It's about two people who built a beautiful life together and are now realizing that love isn't enough to just exist. Love is a lifelong act of intention, not assumption. Ben once said in an interview years ago, "The biggest lesson I've learned from Annie is that love isn't loud. It's showing up, even when you're tired." Perhaps now more than ever, those words will be tested. As of this autumn, sources close to the couple insist no final decisions have been made. Ben continues to film Tipping Point and GMB, balancing work and fatherhood. Annie, meanwhile, is focusing on stability.